Welcome to the Floyd Memorial Library podcast, where we sit down with the people who give shape, texture, and voice to life on the North Fork of Long Island. Some are rooted here by generations, others arrive here by chance or choice, but all carry with them a piece of the story. We talk about what's changing, what's worth holding on to, and the currents of history, both quiet and loud, that run through this place. I'm your host, Christopher Bianchi, and for episode 221, we sit down with Shawn Petretti, Superintendent of the Mattituck-Cutchogue Union Free School District. Shawn's journey in education has taken him through nearly every level of school life, from teacher and dean to principal and now superintendent, giving him a leadership perspective shaped by years in the classrooms and close connection with students and families. We begin by talking about where Shawn grew up and what first drew him to education. Then trace his path through the district and the experiences that continue to guide how he leads today. We also discuss what attracted him to Mattituck-Cutchogue, his early impressions of the district, and how its deep ties to local history, agriculture, and community influenced the schools. Along the way, Shawn shares stories that reflect the spirit of the district, including meaningful community partnerships and new initiatives. We wrap up by looking ahead at the priorities, challenges, and moments that give him hope for the future of Mattituck-Cutchogue schools and the students they serve. So I hope you enjoy episode 221 with Shawn Petretti. This episode was recorded October 17th, 2025. Thank you so much for coming on the Floyd Memorial Library podcast today. It's really great to have you on today.
Well, thanks for having me, Chris.
Definitely. And so in the beginning, I'd like to just start off a little bit. If you can tell us a little bit about yourself, where you grew up, and what your early life was like.
I was very lucky to grow up in Bayport, which is on the South Shore of Long Island, and small community, tight-knit, very school-centric. You know, everything's centered around the school and our activities there. My father was a trackman for the Long Island Railroad, welder by trade, and my mom was a teaching assistant for BOCES, but she worked in the high school building. Okay. So that was always interesting, having my mother work in the building, kind of separate and apart, but part of the same facility, throughout high school. Mm-hmm. And I was lucky that they had me when they were young, so I was an only child for 9 years, as they were in their 20s. So that, as a young kid, that was fun, a lot of adventures, a lot of fun. And then I had twin sisters, so things changed very quickly. We had twin sisters, and then a year later, my little brother was born. So I was 15 years old with two 1-year-old sisters and a newborn, and that kind of changed things a little bit. But it was a nice transition in life. Transitions are good, and and that was fun too. And getting to be a big brother for the first time in 9 years was absolutely a pleasure and a lot of fun.
Yes. And I was just curious, did your family go back in that area farther back with your grandparents, or?
No, both my parents are from Copiague.
Okay.
All my aunts and uncles, I think actually every one of my aunts and uncles married somebody else from Copiague. It's funny when you get together with the family, everybody, who went to the prom, with the person they're married with now, as my parents did. So they were originally from Copiague, and then our first house was in Selden after my parents were married. They were actually renting a house. And then my father had an on-the-work accident as a welder. I was working for Dayton T. Brown. And as I remember the story, he was welding a gas tank that wasn't completely vented or whatever. And there was an explosion, and he suffered some pretty serious third-degree burns on his upper torso. And I think they received some monies for that were not a lot, in comparison to what you would think would happen today. And so they left the house and they moved into a van with a pop-up camper. and I was around 1 year old, I guess. And they proceeded to travel the country for about a year and a half. So it's funny. I guess I've been close to almost every state in the country, but I don't remember doing any of it. So then they came back. They ended up buying the house that they had left, and we were there until I was in fourth grade. The summer in between third and fourth grade is when I moved from Selden into Bayport. And yeah. And it was great because I was within bike riding distance to the bay. So so from coming from the middle of the island to Bayport, I thought I died and gone to heaven moving there. It was a very nice place to grow up.
What are some of the activities you did I guess it doesn't have to be as a child, but maybe after fourth grade and into high school?
Fourth grade into high school, again, all of a sudden we went from, my parents went from having one child to having four, and three young ones. So things shifted quite a bit as far as my father started working numerous jobs. He would teach welding at night, when he got home, would get as much overtime as he could, and my mom stayed home with the kids. So for the most part, I was left to my own devices, from that time on, when my siblings were born. And I can't say that was a bad thing. It was a lot of fun. It was a lot of hanging out with the neighborhood kids, riding our bikes, fishing, crabbing, clamming, doing those sort of activities, but, really entertaining ourselves. And, I can remember games of steal the flag every night on the street. Like all the kids just kind of congregated until the street lights came on, and then everyone had to go home. But so we didn't really. There weren't a lot of trips or vacations. When my brothers and sisters got a little older, we'd start camping again, which was an activity we did a lot when I was just me. And then later on, every summer, it was kind of, I was pretty much out of high school by that time, but my parents would go and rent a house over on Davis Park for a week in August over on Fire Island. And that was like our big vacation and something that we all really looked forward to. It was a lot of fun.
And what about your schooling experience, whether through middle school or high school? How was that?
Middle school's tough. I mean, it was tough for me. I watch kids go through middle school now. It's a tough time period. Everyone's trying to find themselves, jockey for position. You all of a sudden care so much about what other people think, and so that was, middle school was interesting. And also at that time, my mom had decided to get me into modeling. So I got signed with a Ford modeling agency, and I was going into Manhattan. I was actually in middle school. My day was truncated, and my mom and I, aunts and different people and babysitters would watch the kids, and we would go into Manhattan and work and then come home, which was an interesting experience for someone that had really just kind of been kicking around Bayport a lot. And now, we're going into Manhattan and having all those experiences and everything that goes along with it. I was in a Jordache Jeans commercial. And so when you're in middle school and you start doing those things and you start showing up in the Caldor catalog and things like that, it gave people a lot of material to really give me a hard time about, but it was pretty interesting. It was a lot of fun, but it was a lot. I had to sacrifice quite a bit, friendships and activities and school activities. And in junior high, I was exposed to the sport of wrestling, and I fell in love with it. And I can remember not wanting to miss practices. That was a struggle. And then, when you're working and you want to leave that for a while, the agency doesn't like that, and they find somebody else to kind of take your place. So that was a bit of a struggle. And then, when you're wrestling, sometimes your skin's not always in the best of shape, and mat burns and stuff like that. And I can remember showing up to shoots and the photographers not being real happy with how I looked. And then in ninth grade, I walked away from it. It was decided it wasn't for me. and I wasn't enjoying it anymore, and didn't necessarily see maybe the long term of what it could have been, but yeah, just decided that wasn't for me, and I wanted to commit and be part of the team and hang out with my friends and do all those things that a teenager wants to do.
But that was something you said your mom got you into
Yes.
early on, and
yeah. It was there were some acting lessons that went along with it, and all that stuff. But so that was middle school. It was that was kind of the middle school years, and then in the high school years, Bayport was a great place to go to high school. I wasn't the best student, but I was involved in everything that were going. Again, my parents were very distracted with my siblings, and no one was checking on the homework and stuff like that. But it's I had some very good friends in high school. I'm still very good friends with some of those people. Go on vacations with our families together, and stuff. And it was a place you could form some pretty good relationships with your teachers too. And actually, some of the relationships I had with my teachers, Mrs. Blank in particular, 11th grade U.S. history teacher, that was kind of when I decided that, hey, I think I want to go into education. I want to do what she does. Just being able to I always had a love of U.S. history, and that really developed from reading in junior high and kind of getting into, I think it was My Brother Sam is Dead was a book that really kind of took me down that path of U.S. history, and really, generated an interest in that. And so I really enjoyed my 11th grade U.S. history class and having those conversations about, the makeup and the whys and the hows and of different aspects of our country and government. And so that's what kind of motivated me. I was lucky I left high school knowing what I wanted to do, that I wanted to go into education. I wanted to teach history.
And coming out of high school, where did you end up going for college?
So I was supposed to go, and I was accepted and supposed to go wrestle at Springfield College up in Massachusetts, and was pretty set on doing that. They had an education program, and then at the end of my senior year, wrestling season ended in March. I had been pulling quite a bit of weight my senior year. I didn't have the success I was hoping to have, and I became a little bit disenfranchised with it. And I remember walking into my guidance counselor's office late May, early June, and saying, I don't want to wrestle in college, and I don't, I don't think I want to go to Springfield. And he's like, well, what do you want me to do? I'm like, well, what do you think we should do? And he knew somebody in admissions at North Adams State College in Massachusetts, and it was a state school up there. They had an education program. He made a phone call, got me in, and so for my first year, I went up to North Adams State in Massachusetts. They didn't have a secondary education program, so I again, it's your freshman year in college, so you're taking a lot of the prereqs for things and some philosophy of education classes. And then from there, I knew I wanted to transfer out, so I was looking at schools in Boston, in that area, and had gotten into Northeastern and some other schools I wanted to go to. And I remember coming home and having the conversation with my parents, and the price tag associated to any of the schools I had applied to and wanted to go to were not, they weren't doable. And so at that point in time, I decided, well, I didn't want to go back to North Adams. So I came home and I enrolled in Suffolk Community College for a year, which was a good experience. It wasn't, the college experience that I wanted to have, but it was, in hindsight, and you look back and what it cost, and it was actually, I think I was able to make more money working than what it cost me to go to school.
Yes.
And I got a lot of my classes out of the way, and then I had my best friend at the time, Pete, was playing hockey at Potsdam State College, and the SUNYs were definitely more aligned with what my parents wanted to help me pay for school, and he had an opening in his house, and they had a an education program, a history program. So I transferred up to Potsdam, and that's where I finished my schooling.
And were you interested in coming back to Long Island later for working?
So I knew that I wanted to come back to Long Island.
Okay.
I was pretty set on that. But while in Potsdam, I fell in love with a girl from Rochester who was a little bit younger than me. Heather, we ended up getting married. She actually now teaches second grade in Greenport.
Nice.
But so I graduated. I came down here. I did my student teaching in Hauppauge, and immediately started the grind of trying to find a job. And in the mid-'90s, finding a social studies teaching position on Long Island was close to being impossible. Mm-hmm. But so I said, I'm not going to spread myself all over the place. I want to commit to a place where I maybe want to get a job. And I could remember I got scuba certified when I was in high school, and the checkout dive was at Mattituck Inlet. And I had heard about the North Fork from my father as a trackman. I can remember him doing a project out here and him coming home and talking about the North Fork. The North Fork, you got to see this place. I can remember him talking to my mom about it. And he would come home with these bags of potatoes, 'cause a lot of the tracks were going through the potato fields.
Yes.
And, so I'd always, wanted to see the North Fork. And then we did that checkout dive, and I was like, wow, this place is pretty special. So when it was time to start looking for a job, and you start substitute teaching and trying to get into school districts, I started subbing out here in Mattituck, and then found out they were going to have an opening in social studies. So I really committed myself to it. And it was a long drive from Bayport to come out to sub every morning, especially when you're getting that call early in the morning.
Yes.
But it was great. So I did that for a few months until the end of the year, and that job came up, and I didn't get that job. Mm-hmm. There were like 3 or 4 of us with social studies certifications that were subbing pretty regular at the time. And Gary Buckner ended up getting the job.
Okay.
And Gary just retired last year.
Yes.
An incredible teacher. District made the right choice. They hired the right guy for that job. So then I put my efforts elsewhere, and it was getting disheartening because I'd been on other interviews in a lot of other school districts, mm-hmm. and it almost felt like I'm never going to get a social studies teaching job on Long Island. And Heather was still up in Potsdam, so I made the decision that I was going to go down and try to get a job in the Carolinas, in North Carolina. At that time, there was a need for teachers down there. And so at the time, I was, in the summers, I would tend bar over on Fire Island and in Ocean Bay Park, and would make a good amount of money at the time. So I had some money in the bank account, and I kind of packed up what I had into my truck and drove down to North Carolina and kind of bounced around trying to find a place to live where I could find some work. And again, you're young, and you want to do all those fun things. So I went right to the Outer Banks, found some great places to live because it was the off season, but there was no work out there at all. And unless I wanted to go do something like go work on a shrimp boat or something like that, which I wasn't ready to jump into that. So I ended up in Wilmington, North Carolina. Okay. A little bit more of a city. Yes. And some work opportunities down there. So I lived down there for that winter. And I worked as a habilitation technician in a house which had troubled youth in it. Some pretty extreme cases where somebody you kind of rotated through. So I was on the night shift, working with a particular kid at the time who had gotten in some trouble with the law and needed 24/7 monitoring. But I don't know if they had a juvie set up there or not. But so I did that, and then I did construction during the day. A guy I was sharing an apartment with worked on a construction crew. So I did that for the winter. Was working on getting my certification transferred over to North Carolina. But I was not happy. I didn't like it. I wasn't adjusting well to the change in everything down there. And Heather flew down to North Carolina for her spring break to come see me, and I wasn't happy, and wrestling with the idea of, do I go back to Fire Island, that summer and leave North Carolina and go make some more money, or do I stay down here and keep working away at what I was doing? And I wasn't happy, and she was like, let's go back. And so she convinced me in that week that she was with me to put everything I had in storage, and we got in my truck and I drove her back up to Rochester, and then came home and started working as an electrician, as helper, and until the summer started, and then I did the Fire Island thing again, and then started substitute teaching. Heather graduated, we got engaged at her graduation, and then she moved down here, and she came out to Fire Island with me. She waited tables out there. And then at the end of the season, we found a winter rental on Oak Island over near Robert Moses State Park.
Okay.
And so we lived there. She got a job in the city working for Estee Lauder. I was substitute teaching West Babylon School District, Nequat School District, coached wrestling that winter, and really was trying very, very hard to find a teaching job. Again, not a very easy thing to do. And so we went into that summer. We were getting married in August, and we were over on Fire Island, and we kind of agreed that if I didn't have a job come September, that we would move up to Rochester. Her mom had an apartment in the house, and we would move up there, and I would get my master's in technology and education. Right, that was an opening field. And so that was the plan, that I had to find a job, before we got married. And if not, we would shift gears and go up there. And I wasn't really looking forward to the prospect of living in Rochester. But, we were in it together, and, we're doing that thing. So over on Fire Island, kind of going through the summer, and resolved myself to the fact that, we were going to be moving up to Rochester, and I get a call. We didn't have phones over there. This was prior to cell phones, and many of our houses didn't have phones. And so when someone wanted to get a message to you, they called where you worked. Mm-hmm. And so I go into work, and there's a message from my mother that someone from Mattituck called. So I was like, okay. So I get some quarters, and I go on the payphone on the front deck of where I was working, and I call her, and there was a call from the assistant principal, Ken Barton, wanted me to call him. So I called Ken Barton, and I guess they'd had an opening of a 1/5 social studies position, which means you teach one class. Okay. And then the rest of the position was a TA's position in the in-school suspension room for the rest of the day. And he wanted to know if I was interested in that. I said, absolutely. What's the interview process? And he said, well, there's not. We had an interview process. I had missed it. I didn't realize that there was an opening. I didn't even put in for it. But the person took the job and then rescinded the job, I guess the first week in August, around about then. And he goes, I remember, you were here, you did a nice job for us, would you come in and meet with Mr. McKenna, the principal? So I did. He offered me the job. It was I think it was 5 days before I was getting married. Oh, wow. So get back out to Fire Island, and I'm like, guess what, Heather, we're not going to Rochester. I got a job, and, she was obviously super happy for me. And then I had to explain to her it's really 1/5 of a teaching job and, a teaching assistant job. But, she's always so supportive in anything that I'm doing. So, that's how I landed at Mattituck, and we got married, and then moved off Fire Island, moved into my parents' house in Bayport, and started looking, for a place to live. And she started looking for work out here. She started working for Suffolk Times. Okay. Out in Riverhead. No, not the Suffolk Times, Suffolk Life.
Okay.
Yeah, Suffolk Life was still in existence at the time. So She was working for them, and I started working at Mattituck.
What year was that you started?
That was 97, 98
Okay.
was my first year there.
Okay. And when you were substituting, was that a few years earlier?
That was 2 years prior, so I guess that would have
Okay.
been like 95, 96.
Okay. But you always hearing from your father, and then you coming out there, and then from the substitute to starting, what did you really think of the North Fork at that time in the 90s?
Well, it's the North Fork. It was beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
Geographically, you got a bay on one side, the Sound on the other, all the farmland and open space. So that was obviously very appealing. But then when I started working in the school, and just the tight-knit community and the quality of people that you were interacting with every day, be it the teachers, the students, the parents, it was very clear to me early on that it was a pretty special place.
Yeah.
So I was thrilled to be able to go back and actually land there. It was, when you would ask me, at 19, 20 years old, what do you want to do with your life? It was, I want to live on the east end of Long Island. I want to teach history and coach wrestling,
Mm-hmm.
And those things kind of fell in place for me.
And now just looking at that, you've held a variety of roles in the district, from teacher to dean to principal and now superintendent. How does that feel, going through those experiences and eventually becoming superintendent?
It's been a great ride. I'm incredibly thankful, that I've been able to work at Mattituck all these years. But it was interesting. Almost every time my career shifted, it was out of something tumultuous happening within the district. Mm. Or just wasn't never really planned. I had no ambition of going into administration. At that time in my life, I had achieved what I had set out to achieve, and Ken Barton was the assistant principal, and I think I was there for 3 years, and really just learning how to be a good teacher. Mm-hmm. And I got a phone call from Jim McKenna, and I knew that they had gone through interview processes. That was the big question: who's going to be the new assistant principal? And I got a phone call in August from Jim McKenna saying, listen, we haven't been able to find an assistant principal. Would you be interested in being the high school dean? And I was like, well, what does that really, mean? What does that look like? And he goes, well, you teach 3 classes, and then the rest of the day you would handle the discipline of the high school students. I got another teacher who was going to do the junior high, be the junior high dean, Sonia Brigham, who's now a social studies teacher. She was in the social studies department as well. And she would do the junior high, you would do the high school, and Imelda Corcoran, who was an English teacher, and had her, I guess she had her administrative degree, she would handle the administrative components of things, teacher supervision, evaluation, and stuff like that. So as the dean, my role would be to handle the discipline end of stuff. Mm-hmm. And, it came with a little bit more money. I was like, well, that was good because I weren't making a lot of money at the time. And mm-hmm. So, I said, yeah, I'll do it. So, in August, early August, I thought I was going to go be teaching, and now I'm coming in and starting the year in September, and all of a sudden, I'm the dean handling discipline, which was very interesting, mm-hmm. Very different than anything I'd done before, and I learned a lot, about dealing with different types of kids and really getting an understanding of why behaviors happen. It's not just a behavior and now a consequence. It was like, okay, well, why did this behavior happen? How do we make sure it doesn't happen again? Getting a deeper understanding of what goes on in kids' lives and how that impacts them a little bit. So that was like a speed course in doing that. And then, I guess it had gone well. And then Jim McKenna's like, well, we want to put the AP position back in. Will you go get your master's in educational administration? And so I was, okay, if that opportunity is going to exist, if I do that. So I got into CW Post. They're one of the few places locally that had a master's in school administration. Mm-hmm. And this is before online classes. So it was a wild time because at the same time, my wife got pregnant with our first kid, John Carl. And so she was now staying home. And I was teaching full time. I was the varsity wrestling coach, which was a pretty big time commitment. And now I'm traveling to Old Brookville to get my master's. So, the day would end and I'd shoot out, from Mattituck to Old Brookville almost every day. Wow. And, to get the degree. And then there were Saturday classes. They had a satellite campus in Brentwood. I would do that. And so in I think I was supposed to get it in 3 years. And I think 2 years in, Mel Corcoran said she was ready to retire. And that really put the pressure on to get that degree done. And so I did. I got it done. And at that time, Sonia Brigham decided she didn't want to be the junior high dean any longer, and they had hired an assistant principal for the junior high specifically. And then when I got my degree, I was appointed as the assistant principal and held that position for 5 years. And that was early 2000s, and Mattituck went through a tough time where there was a proposal to do the building expansion. They had put up one proposal that got shot down by the community. And then they, at the same time, we failed the budget, right? We talk about awakening the sleeping giant. There was a lot of people in the community that were not happy with the scale of the plan. We had had somebody come out, do demographics, study, and, you have all this farmland, they're going to build 1 million houses, you're going to have 1 million kids, and hit us with it was a 3-story expansion on the back. The fire department was against it because they didn't have a truck that went 3 stories. Like it was a pretty crazy time. And, so then we went on austerity, and the community was not happy. They were super supportive. I got one of the things that I remember just being amazed. We go on austerity, we lose all the activities for, sports and activities for kids, which is devastating, right? Kids get one crack at high school. And so when that happens, they just lose tremendous amounts of opportunities and experiences. And the community rallied together, the Mattituck-Cutchogue Fund for Students. A couple parents and community members got together, and the efforts put forth in fundraising, and they raised the funds to reinstate all student activities, and it was a Herculean effort. And I remember watching that happen and getting dragged into it a little bit and seeing the passion and the support of the kids in that community really just took it to another level for me as far as, what I felt about Mattituck and the community and the support for education and kids. It was quite amazing. But the board had become unhappy with the superintendent at that time. He was somebody that had came in. He didn't have a background in education. He was a business guy. And, again, they just really weren't happy with how that whole thing had gone. And they appointed Jim McKenna, the high school principal, as the superintendent at that time. And it happened like mid-year. And at the same time, they appointed me as acting principal. So it was like, okay, wow, here I am. Now I'm principal. Yeah. And, and we went from a building with Jim McKenna had been the principal for 16 years, 2 assistant principals, one in the middle school, myself at the high school, to where we were on austerity. And so I was the acting principal, and I was the only administrator in the building. We reinstated the deans. We appointed 2 deans to help with student disciplinary issues and stuff like that. but yeah, that was a pretty crazy time for the district. A lot of transition in central office, within the building, and then things straightened out. We got our legs under us with the budget, and Jim McKenna really did a great job of bringing back the trust of the taxpayers and the support of the community to support the budget. And we got the building project passed and done, and which was another interesting thing as a first-year principal, second-year principal, and we were involved in intensive construction, building a new wing off the back, building a new library in the middle of the property, interior renovations. That was in 2006, 2007. So you got construction workers outside the classroom, and you're just managing all that. You had a hard hat with, principal written on the front of it. You going out to, all my shoes were always muddy. It was fun. It was exciting. I learned a tremendous amount about school construction and that whole process, which is really a different kind of animal. That was a pretty wild time. But then it settled. We got our legs under us and put some structure in. We hired an assistant principal. Dave Smith was hired as the assistant principal. He was also in the district. He was a band director. And then Dave and I were principal and assistant principal for 16 years. And, the opportunity when Ann Smith had retired, the board some members of the board had talked to me about, if I was interested in being the superintendent, and I told them I wasn't. I was really enjoying what I was doing as the high school principal. It's a great job. It's such a hard job, but high school principal is just an incredibly rewarding job, especially where I was doing it. So I didn't take the job, and somebody else came in. Jill Yarosh came in and took the position as superintendent, and was with us for 2.5 years, and announced that she was leaving and going to for another opportunity in Cold Spring Harbor.
Oh, okay.
And it was towards the end of the year. It was a really quick turnaround, and the board approached me once again, and I said at this time I felt like I was ready. My children were older. I had 3 children, and so I took that position. And again, I'd been the high school principal for 16 years. At that time, I felt I was due for a transition, and took on the superintendency. And it's something that sometimes you don't realize you need something, until it happens. And I've really enjoyed that transition. Again, the opportunity to learn other ends. And Ann Smith and Jim McKenna, as superintendents, have been excellent in kind of bringing me into conversations and high-level things and working with the board. So I felt like I had a good understanding and a good foundation of what the job entailed. And then, again, knowing all the players. Being at Mattituck so long, I knew the board members. I knew their intent. Mattituck's been blessed for as long as I can remember, having board members that were really in it for the right reason, in it for the kids, but also looking out for the taxpayer. Generally fiscally conservative board of ed, and but want to provide any opportunities possible for the students. So there was a good foundation. I knew most of the employees. I mean, most of the folks in the high school I had hired, between being on committees as an assistant principal and then being the principal for 16 years. And then the students, the families, there was the familiarity definitely helped with that transition, as well as the other administrators. I knew the quality of some of the other administrators that we had in the district. But so, again, so I took the superintendency, and at the same time, we had a retirement of our technology director. We had a resignation from our business official. We had a retirement of our elementary school principal. So it was like right away, had to get into it and start doing some hiring. Dave Smith, the assistant principal, went to the principalship at the high school, so that was helpful. But then we had to hire an assistant principal. So right away, we went into a pretty heavy hiring regimen to try to fill all those spots.
Yes. And how long have you been superintendent?
This is my 5th year.
5th year, okay. Were you still principal during transitioning with COVID?
I was, when COVID hit, I was the high school principal.
Oh, okay.
And was the high school principal for that first full year of COVID.
Oh, okay.
So, that was, I mean, everyone's got crazy COVID stories, but I was very, very proud of the way Mattituck-Cutchogue handled COVID. And again, we had some things that really played in our favor as well. We were able to transition right away to online learning. Jerry Daugherty, who had been our technology director for quite a few years, had done a really nice job of training teachers, putting infrastructure in place. A lot of our teachers were becoming pretty comfortable with the Google platform. And then when we saw schools started to shut down, we knew something was happening. Like, okay, something's going to happen. We thought we might have to close for a week or two. And so we quickly got all of our teachers trained in how to use Google Classroom. We had some people on staff that were pretty good at it, proficient at it, and we did a lot of turnkey training. And so when COVID hit, we were able to kind of keep classes going. We would start the day with the Pledge of Allegiance. Try to keep things as normal as possible. I think we had 20-minute periods.
Wow.
And so we would keep the school schedule. We'd start later at 9 o'clock, but we'd start with the pledge and then ran through, each class. We did our best. We, as administrators, we were in every day trying to come up with activities for kids, and really felt awful for our seniors that year. The class of 2020 really lost out on quite a bit, whether it was your athletic experiences, just finishing your senior year with your friends and all the activities that you love to do. I can remember the coming in the day that it was announced that, we were done for the year. Like there was no hope of coming back or graduation or all those things. And I pull up to the front of the high school, and there's a group of girls, a group of seniors, and they're sitting on the pavement outside the gym doors, and 6 feet apart, but they were all sitting together, and they were all crying. Like that was it. It just that part of their life was like robbed from them. But we came up with the drive-through graduation, right? Everyone was getting so creative and borrowing ideas from each other and just trying to come up with trying to make normalcy out of chaos, really. And then as a team, the administrative team we were in that summer, I probably worked harder that summer than any summer in my career as we planned for an opening. We knew we had the space. We were very lucky in that by this time, we'd seen some significant declines of enrollment, and we had extra space where we could really kind of spread out a little bit. And, our goal right off the bat was that we were going to get the kids in full time. We were able to do so at the elementary level, the secondary level. We started on an A-day, B-day schedule. And again, there was a lot of fear, right? That the teachers were nervous about coming into work and the proximity with so many people, and parents were nervous about having their kids come in. And there was, we really didn't know what we were dealing with. And, and safety's paramount, and you wanted to keep everybody safe. And I can remember you're waiting to see what Governor Cuomo had to say every day about what the new regulations were going to be, or, what the new hoops were going to be. But, we jumped through all of them. And I think by mid-October, we had every student in every day. A credit to the teachers. They really did the, we worked hard in the planning and preparing and all that, but it was the teachers that really every day came in and just got so creative. We had students or families that didn't want their children to come to school, out of concern. And so we were, you're teaching kids at home at the same time. So that was a big shift. That was something teachers had never done before. The classroom's a sacred place. Teacher, you shut the door and you're the master of your domain, and it's you and the students. And, you do your work, and all of a sudden we're like, no, you're opening up your classroom to the world, for scrutiny and so forth. And there was a lot of fear about all that, although that for us, that really never came to fruition. Our parents are, again, Mattituck being a special place, a lot of things got to happen for that. And one of them is the support of our parents for the school system, and knowing that they have quality educators and that they trust and support them. So we got through, but it was at the end of that first year of COVID when I transitioned into the superintendency.
Okay. And you mentioned some stories already, just with whether it was with your role as principal, but is there a memorable moment from your time interacting with students or teachers or families that highlights the spirit of the district?
Well, I mentioned the Mattituck-Cutchogue Fund for Students.
Yes.
That was a big one. There's to say that there's these like a one major event. I don't know if I could pinpoint on that. I think it's just a series of hundreds of significant but smaller events that would transpire. One of my favorite things as the high school principal was taking the 8th graders to Washington, D.C. every year, getting the kids out of the brick and mortar and getting them out. And that was, it's a great trip. And again, it's teachers stepping up, volunteering their time away from their families to take other people's children to one of the larger cities in the world so that they can have this experience. And then just the students and the support of the families. When we run that trip, it's a tight ship, and with a high level of expectation, and we make that very clear to our students. And so you'd go on a trip and you'd be staying at the Marriott, and with 128th graders, and they were all excited. Many of them never had been on a trip like that, and they're in the hotel and they're excited and all this stuff. But the conduct of our kids, the way they carry themselves, their level of maturity when you need them to have that level of maturity, just the compliments we would get from the bus companies, the
Yes.
tour guides, the hotels, was always a major sense of pride, and just how our kids conduct themselves. Those trips are expensive. And so there's never been a time in Mattituck when we had an event or a trip or something that we were doing where a kid couldn't go because they didn't have the finances. Whether it's every year we have teachers donate, and they don't want their name attached to it. We have community members that are incredibly generous. There's people that I can always call to say, hey, we have a family in need, or we, a situation where they always rally to make sure that every kid has the opportunity any other kid has. And I always thought that was something very, very special about Mattituck.
Definitely. And just looking now with you being superintendent, the district has recently launched new initiatives, including the construction industry program and other community-focused projects. Why are these projects important for the community, and are there any other initiatives you hope to work on?
So are you talking about the 5-year facility plan, or are you talking about our academic programming?
The 5-year
So,
facility.
Again, being here for a while, you walk around, I can remember the leaky roofs and, some of the different challenges that we had with our facilities. Mattituck's, our grounds crews have always taken great care, but there were some maintenance pieces that really needed to be done. So coming in, it was, okay, I had to learn about how do we finance these projects and how do we prioritize these projects and how should we go about doing that and really tackle some of these projects. And so Tom Kelly, our head of facilities, is he's a machine, and he's a perfectionist, and he doesn't stop moving. It's constant improvement with him. So with him and the our district architect John Grillo, we did a building survey of all of our facilities and created a priority list of projects that we wanted to get done. And I knew that we certainly didn't want to go out for a bond. I still, remember last time we tried to do that, it didn't go incredibly well. And, so how do we go about knocking off these projects? And with our business official at the time, we, once we had our priority list, it was about setting up a capital reserve fund where we would put excess funds at the end of the year, if we underspent the budget, and create a savings account and then begin to knock off those projects. And I went through 4 business officials in my first 2 years, but I have a very savvy business official now, Charlie Delargy. He knows his stuff. He knows how to move money into higher interest rates and do different things. So through some creative budgeting and stuff like that, we've been able to fund. We're now on our second capital reserve that we funded, and we've been able to knock out a tremendous number of projects. All the roofs within the district. First thing, you got to take care of your roofs, right?
Yeah.
So we were able to get them all redone, 30-year warranty on all the roofs. And then I knew that our tech wing was incredibly outdated. We have some very talented teachers in our technology department, and they were doing incredible things. But I would go out there and I would look at, they're trying to do too many things in a space that just wasn't designed for it. And just, it seemed dangerous at times, like almost like, okay, but we're keeping these programs going, and they were doing great things. And I knew that we wanted to expand our programming. We wanted to bring back our wood shop and do some more carpentry stuff. And there was an interest in welding, and there was some pressure from some local businesses about, marine mechanics and, how can we expose our students to that? So there was a push, and that was really the drive to do the STEM wing and do a major renovation. And we got pretty lucky because the building that I was in was really a shell building. It had an exoskeleton. So we were able to just gut the inside, keep the footprint of that building, and really restructure that space to fit our needs. And now we're running a carpentry program. We're running a BOCES carpentry program where our students are getting CTE credit, and we have students from. There was a carpentry program at BOCES in Riverhead, and they moved it to Brookhaven, and which is just really too far for our kids to participate in. So we created the program in Mattituck with the help of BOCES and the support of Southold and Greenport. They send students to us as well. And that program is, the first year we didn't get it off the ground. We didn't have enough kids. Last year we ran it with a skeleton crew of kids, and the 3 districts really made an investment in that. It cost quite a bit of money to get that off the ground. And but the 3 districts did it. And then now we have a full boat of kids, and it's a self-sustaining program, which is excellent. But our welding classes are very popular, small engine repair, as well as, principles of engineering and all of our other STEM classes. It's really quite the facility, and helped move us forward in that area. I'm pretty proud of that. And then it was, the playground at Cutchogue East needed to be done in our elementary school. And just really, through Tom's lens, the input of the board, the community, the administration, really knocking things off pretty aggressively. And, our last project was the fascia of the 1934 building, the junior senior high school building, which was the original wood in the cupola. And it was probably more putty than wood at this point in time. And I would joke, people say that the building looks beautiful. I'm like, yeah, if you're driving by at 30 miles an hour. But walk up and take a close look, and you could see that it was in trouble. And we'd been talking about it as a district for 10 years, but the cost was pretty significant. And again, we were able to save away the money to get that project done, and it came out beautifully this summer.
No, I saw that driving this summer. And I think I had just 1 or 2 other questions. Just looking ahead, what are some of the key priorities or challenges you're focusing on for the district over the next few years? I know you mentioned enrollment as something, as a challenge.
Yeah, well, there's 2 things, coming at us. I mean, the enrollment decline has helped us in that it has allowed us to reallocate resources, finances, and create a lot of programs over the last few years. And so right now we offer 17 AP courses. The number of elective courses, we've really worked hard at making sure that there was something for everybody. And and sometimes we'll run those some of those courses at with lower enrollments. Maybe in a lot of places that wouldn't be considered acceptable. but we talk about equity of transcript and how we want the students of Mattituck-Cutchogue to be able to have the same opportunities to build a transcript that students from larger schools would have, and have those different experiences as well, whether it be the tech classes we're offering and things of that nature. And, so we've been able to do that, and we've built quite the program at the junior senior high school right now, as well as the elementary school. The number of clubs and activities that we're running are tremendous, and highly engaging. And, so the fear is, with the decrease in enrollment, coupled with we are anticipating foundation aid cuts that are going to be pretty significant coming our way in the next few years. That's the big challenge. How can we maintain our programming and the opportunities that our students have when our enrollments are decreasing dramatically? Our demographics are shifting quite a bit, which provides challenges and opportunities. But that's those two things coming at us at once is a concern, and it's a constant conversation with the board. We make it part of our annual goals to make sure that we're aware, but it's the now what, and for right now, it looks like we're going to lean on continuing to work with our neighboring districts the best we can, to provide opportunities. We've done it in athletics. We do it with the ROTC. We're doing it with some of our clubs right now. Southold's opened their doors to our students from Mattituck to participate in their robotics program, which is amazing. And, so I think continuing along those lines is something, that we're going to be looking at. But I don't have, the answers to the problem, but I do know that's the problem that's coming at us. That's my biggest concern for Mattituck-Cutchogue in the coming years.
Okay. And how do you balance just the day-to-day administrative responsibilities with also staying connected to the students and the classroom?
It can be difficult at times. I'm in a different building than where the elementary schools at Cutchogue East, where Cutchogue West, the administrative team, and then over at the high school. And it was really easy when I first transitioned because I knew all the students.
Yes.
At the high school, and so I could walk in and I was just so familiar with them. And it's been hard to kind of keep that going, quite a bit. One of the things that I've loved most about transitioning to the superintendency is getting to know Cutchogue East and interacting with the students and teachers there. If ever I'm having a rough day at the desk, I get up, I go down to Cutchogue East, and a lot of high fives and hugs, and the kids can be so uplifting there. But it's a struggle, and I got to remind myself to get out from behind the desk, because if you allow it, it'll just suck you in, and the emails and the phone calls and the reporting and all the other things that go into it. So I have to make a conscious effort to get up and go in the buildings and get to the different activities and participate and have some fun. We have the pep rally coming up in a little while, and I'm looking forward to that. And we had the Tucker Bowl last night, which is a awesome Mattituck tradition. And so I try to get to those events as often as possible and interact with the kids as much as I can.
Definitely. And I think just lastly, just looking at your career over this time and what you come into today, what gives you hope for the future of the Mattituck-Cutchogue schools and the students you serve for the future as for public education?
It's really a combination of it's Mattituck-Cutchogue has an incredible staff, an incredible talented staff that they're student centered, and they're professionals. They are very into improving their practice all the time and doing what's best for kids. So you couple that with a community that really values and supports education, and the students are going to continue to prosper. I stay very connected to a lot of our alumni, and I love hearing about what it is that they've gone on and go on to do, and it's amazing. They're all over the world. They're doing incredible things. And then some of them are here locally doing incredible things. And, so we put out a good product. Mattituck-Cutchogue as a community and a school system, we really do. And, I don't see anything getting in the way of that. Yes. I think that will continue to happen.
Yes. No, but I want to thank you so much for taking the time to come on the podcast today and share your story and all the work you've done and continue to do with educating our youth out here on the North Fork. It's really important. So thank you so much for coming on today.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Well, I hope you enjoyed episode 221 with Shawn Petretti. I want to thank you for listening to the Floyd Memorial Library podcast, and we'll see you next time.